Envoy Kaja's task did indeed have ulterior motives. I would learn much in that first journey into the frigid north. Well, my delivery of the Nausilibur certainly was an eventful trip. 3 days ago, I boarded the Aerochaetus destined for Scandia. I supposedly have some Scandian on one side of my family, but that blood has run thin in the successive generations. As soon as the door of the ship opened, the Berga wind seemed to swarm over me like hornets, prickling my skin with a chill I haven't felt in years. The biting cold was part of the trade-off, because the city it blanketed was quite beautiful. The streets and marbles are well cared for. You see much less random destruction than you might find in a coastal city on the Mare Nostrum. Berga is the capital of the province of Scandia. Its port became a massive central hub for the Northern Classis fleets. It's often called the most remote city in the Republic, though that is not entirely true. Many of the Auralian cities are more remote, at least from a Roman perspective, but they sit much closer to the border with Cyane. Now, Berga is important because it is the most defensible city in the Republic. Rome, for all its glory, lies only 1,000 leagues from our border with Axum and the great sands of the Sahara. Berga, on the other hand, sits as far away from the imperial borders as you could possibly go. On this side of the world, anyway. Berga has at least 3 classes, 3 legions, and 3 aeroclasses between it and a neighboring empire in any direction. That includes the Arctic Circle, as Scandia, Sclavinia, and Britannia all patrol the northern seas. The Scandians themselves are a hardy people, but with a warmth to their demeanor which helps fight the ever-present cold. Unfortunately, my trip was not over, and my destination was not in the city. Upon entering the library of Berga, I asked the receptionist where to go for the Deep Vault. To continue, I had to prove my rank as an envoy and show the sealed package presented to me by Envoy Kaja. Once I'd gone through the ritual, I was led through a set of doors protected by armed guards. They requested that I surrender my own weapon, which I did without argument. At the bottom of the stairwell were 4 more guards protecting an entryway of sorts. 3 carriage-like vehicles sat on a tracked roadway leading down into an underground tunnel. A single operator was stationed in the first vehicle, who opened the door for my transit. Once seated, the vehicle carried me several leagues deep below the earth. We were within one of the mountains which framed 2 of the fjords behind the city. After 10 minutes descent, I felt as though I was going to pass through Tartarus itself. The only scenic feature of the ride was the occasional slab which could be slid in place to seal the deep vault like a crypt. Eventually, we reached the bottom, and the carriage operator opened the doors of the vehicle. To my shock, I was immediately greeted by someone standing on the platform. She had come scurrying as soon as she heard the hum of the carriage's dynamo. She was a young woman, in roughly her mid-20s, with golden blonde hair which seemed to glow under the soft amber lights around us. She had watery blue eyes which she would not take off of me, as though I were a curio being added to their collection. Her robes were quite familiar, though, not unlike those worn by an elder. She seemed at least 2 decades too young to reach a position like that, though. The ankle-length vestige was a deep purple color with pink highlights to the detailing. The familiar hood of ministerium robes rested along her back, almost totally covered by braids and frays of loose hair. She was quick to introduce herself and ask me my own name. This was in fact the person I was sent to find, Archivist Hilda Iversen. The Deep Vault of Berga is a very reclusive place to find yourself working. Most of those who accept such a position have a personality type to match the trappings. They are those who find solace and solitude in the countless aisles of scrolls, tomes, and crystals. Communication with other people is the chore. The only true effort of their jobs is maintaining communication between themselves and the outside world. This was true of the few dozen keepers and guards who assisted the current archivist. I perhaps only heard 100 words in total from all of them combined. Hilda Iversen was the complete opposite. She craved human interaction as a garden craves the light of soul. Her companions were mere candles by comparison. After vigorously taking my arm, which nearly became a full embrace, she invited me to take a tour of her domain. She also invited the carriage operator, who spoke as few words as her subordinates. He refused, instead sitting down with a novel, waiting for my departure. To say the deep vault was large is an understatement. The collective size of the 5 wings easily outmatched those of the actual Library of Burgo we descended from, but with barely a fraction of the staff attending to the volumes. The wings were named after the classical elements: water, earth, fire, and air. The 5th wing was named after the ether, the storied first and last element, that which sits outside the bounds of our terrestrial trappings. Our understanding of ether changed drastically following the discovery of the Omnia Regna. Some still say the cause of the Great Convergence is the dissolution of the ether, which, they claim, is due to the debauchery and sins of the Roman people. How true that is mostly depends on who you ask. Regardless, the ether still lingers enough to have a wing of the vault named after it. Each wing consisted of a central atrium with 4 levels on top of the ground floor, each of them fanned out into spaces with aisles and alcoves for storage or studying. In some of these sections, it was not books or crystals filling the halls, but an assortment of other valuable items. Statues filled many of the halls, both as preserved pieces of artwork as well as ornamentation for the vault itself. Most of these were in marble, but many others were cast in metals of gleaming silver, bronze, and copper coloring. There were also quite a few brass-colored figures wearing the iconic mask of Princeps Aurelian. By far, though, the largest statue was that of Minerva. She stood in the center of the crossing connecting all 5 wings. She stood 25 cubits tall from toes to temple, with her warrior's mask pulled back over her hair. Her left hand held a shield, bearing the symbol of the Ministerium, and her right hand held a spear, standing as tall as she was. In the center of each atrium was a floating gondola large enough to support 2 elephants. I'm sure they made it much easier to transport the larger artifacts up and down the 5 levels. Otherwise, there were stairwells and man-sized elevators spread throughout the space. Most of the keepers we passed worked silently, sorting, reading, cataloging, or maintaining volumes spread throughout the aisles. I'll admit I only gleaned a portion of the information Hilda told me, as her oration could match even Sophia. She took the crystal that Envoy Kaja had given me to bring to her. Held within her caestus, the window scrolled very quickly and disappeared again within moments. She nonchalantly explained that it was a report of casualty incidents from the last year. She placed it seemingly at random on a shelf within the 3rd level of the fire wing. Once done, she led me to a sitting area at the base of Minerva, where she asked if I wanted a drink. I told her an espresso would be nice, thinking it may be the only way to keep up with her for the rest of the conversation. After considering her own order, she lifted her caestus, gesturing to one of the brass figures of Aurelian. The head tilted quickly in a jerking motion, looking directly at us. I nearly jumped from my seat. It stepped off of its platform and walked down the atrium of the ether wing. Once my heart had finally slowed down enough, I asked how that was possible. Automata of such complexity are a myth. Even with Jovian crystals, even with the most advanced Gnosite, it's never been done. The figure came marching back from the dim atrium, carrying a serving tray with both drinks. It handed a saucer and teacup to Iversen, then turned toward me, presenting the espresso. The blank, emotionless mask was frightening. I could only imagine being one of the Persians to bear witness to the living man riding through the streets of conquered Babylon. I took the saucer, and the mechanical soldier returned to its pedestal as though it never left. It was here I determined that I had to record this conversation. Thank you for allowing this.
Of course! The elders know what it's meant to be kept a secret, so just pass it through the chain up properly. Did it surprise you? Did it?
Yes. Yes, it did.
Oh, wonderful! I get so few opportunities to show them off. Aren't they beautiful?
How? How did you do that? Where do they come from? Do they all move?
Oh, There's about 75, 85 of them. I actually forget.
You don't know?
No, I'm kidding. I know. There's 80 exactly. They're called the Century of the Statue Soldiers. They were created specifically as warriors.
So, they can fight?
Oh, yes, quite well. If someone tries to damage part of the collection, they will be immediately apprehended by their big, scary metal hands and sharp, gladius swords. You definitely don't want to hurt someone, because they can be quite quick with those swords.
I mean, this is world-changing. It could alter warfare completely. We wouldn't even need to send Conti into the other realms.
Unfortunately, that won't happen. Technically, the metal men aren't just protectors. They are part of the collection. A very specific kind of crystal is what keeps them ticking, and we have never been able to grow any more.
Then who grew the first crystals?
No one. We found them. They came from an expedition a few decades ago, long before we were born. Some of the best alchemists toyed with them and were able to get them to do work like this. Oh! But they can't go far though. They are on a bit of a tight leash. If I move away from them, they don't work anymore.
They're tied into your K-Stus, into you.
Yep, they attack what I think is mean or scary, even if I'm asleep.
Is there no one else who can take your place? How often are you able to leave here?
Well, I wasn't supposed to become the Archivist for a long time. I was still learning from Miss Trigg. Then, a few months ago, I woke up one morning to find that she hadn't left her chambers yet. And when I checked on her, she was gone.
I'm sorry to hear that. What happened to her?
They weren't completely sure. They think maybe it was her heart. She was very sweet and had a gentle spirit. During her last few months, she was getting more and more anxious about something. I tried to offer my help, but she wouldn't tell me what it was, saying I would find out later, I will find out later. Now, I will never know.
Was she receiving visitors that caused her to worry?
Oh, no. If she did, then I would have met them. We don't get a lot of visitors down here. Most people don't even know this place exists. The keepers are nice, but they are not like Miss Trigg.
How did you end up in this position, Miss Iversen?
No, please call me Hilda.
Alright, Hilda. How did you end up here in the Deep Vault?
Miss Trigg found me. Well, I mean, she found me trying to peek through the door once. I didn't know there was a carriage tunnel. That was shocking. Like, hello? I thought it was just a secret basement or something below the library. Not a whole second library by itself.
You were curious.
Yes, there is so much to see down here. Every book, every scroll has so many secrets. I have barely read through 10% of the entire collection. And I've been here for 5 years. I have a long way to go.
But what about sleeping, eating? Do you not have a place in the city?
I do. But, it's mostly empty right now. There is a place for keepers to sleep and eat at the back of the Eater Wing. I have the big room on the top.
When was the last time you were in the city?
It's been a few months since.
They haven't let you leave since Archivist Trigg died?
I am to be assigned an apprentice of my very own soon. It's just taking a while for them to pick someone, I guess. Usually there were always at least 2. We would spend 2 or 3 days in the city per week, then the 3 days we spent down together was for learning or planning new tasks.
That's not right. We're going to find someone to help you. I'll speak to Envoy Kaja to see if there's anything we can do.
Oh, that would be nice. If it's not too much trouble, of course. But please, feel free to come down anytime you want. I grant you full visiting privileges. You don't have to bring a crystal to come down to see me. But it is okay if you do that too.
I ended the recording there, but did converse with her for a few more hours. The poor thing was starved for attention. I'm beginning to suspect she speaks with the automaton more than she does with the keepers. With these findings, I believe I've more than enough to make the case to Kaja. I'm hoping we can convince Anna Randolph to speak with Elder Helvig and find her a new apprentice. I don't care how critical her position is for the Ministerium. Having her stuck down there is a maddening duty. I think this is what Kaja wanted me to bear witness to. If so, hopefully this will be enough to break open her pillory. I will indeed be visiting her more often, and hopefully on my next trip I can pull her out of that crypt and we can go somewhere that the sunlight touches. Signed, Ulysses Adelbrecht, Envoy, Contus Germanica 7, 9 September 2403. That was indeed the main purpose Kaja sent me for. However, I did not understand at the time the deeper mechanisms at work behind the scenes. Nothing about her circumstance was accidental. It was a plan, but only partially completed.